And now it's time for us to discuss some more of these headlines and simple keywords with Adam joining us via Zoom. Good morning, Adam.
Good morning, Lena. Happy Thursday.
Did you forget?
just needed to check, just in case.
Yeah, sometimes that happens too. It's a Thursday. Good morning to you.
Yeah. It's a lovely day, I've got to say. It's still a lot, not a lot, but slightly hotter than usual for this time of year, I have to say. But,
it's going to rain over the weekend, and then things will cool off and we'll feel better.
Hopefully. I don't like heat, so yeah.
All right, let's get started. We have many keywords to cover this morning, starting with the National Assembly's plenary session that will be convened today. This is our first keyword of the day.
Parliament opens.
So rival parties have agreed to pass a special bill that seeks to establish a special committee to investigate the Itaewon crowd crush. A bill is expected to be passed in the plenary session today. This is as the two parties have kind of found a middle ground to pursue this further. What's the latest?
Yeah, so this was a very contentious bill that was actually vetoed by President Yoon and railroaded after it was railroaded by the Democratic Party in January. And it caused a bit of friction, among many other things, between rival parties. But they did agree to revise some divisive parts of the bill. Now, it calls for the formation of an investigation committee to look into the root cause of the tragedy. The two parties agreed on the length of the committee's mandate, as well as its composition and means of investigation. The composition will include a chairperson and 8 members, 4 appointed by each party, making a total of 9 members. The chairman will be nominated by the National Assembly Speaker. Another thing that was revised was that the bill will no longer allow the committee to request warrants against people of interest. Interestingly, that was something that the DP wanted to have, but they made a concession in that regard. The PPP were against that. They didn't want it to have the power to issue arrest warrants for those responsible, because they said that an investigation earlier already found the root cause and who were responsible for it, so they didn't need it to be done again. Now, the presidential office welcomes the agreement as the first concrete result of President Yoon's talks with the opposition leader Lee Jae-myung. Now, after handling the Itaewon law, the DP plans to attempt to pass other contentious bills, though, such as a special prosecutor bill into a Marine's death. The People Power Party has stated that it opposes bringing any bills to the session that are not jointly agreed upon by both parties, and has indicated it would abstain from voting if they are railroaded by the opposition. So they did manage to find middle ground in one of the major contentious bills, but differences and frictions do remain at large when in considering other bills as well, which the DP are looking to pretty much railroad as well during the plenary session. So, yes, politics all over again.
It didn't stop, did it? And it shouldn't. But maybe it's important to note, for the time being, the top office says it will mark the first outcome of bipartisan cooperation, as promised by President Yoon and the DP chief Lee Jae-myung when they recently sat down. You're right to say that on many other issues and bills, they don't see eye to eye, with the DP having that majority to sort of push through with it within this National Assembly before that expires.
Yeah, so it's interesting that they did kind of reach a consensus on what is kind of, as I said, a major contentious bill that has been the cause of a lot of frictions between the two parties. So maybe could be the start of better cooperation than before, but we'll have to see.
Okay, let's move on to our second keyword of the day.
Presidential reshuffle.
So President Yoon is set to revive the Office of Senior Secretary for Civil Affairs. This comes while the top office is speeding up its personnel and organizational changes to better gather public sentiment. What's the latest?
Right, so the reorganization comes as Yoon marks his second year in office next week. This reorganization began actually at the end of April last month when Yoon named lawmaker Chung Jin-suk as his new chief of staff and a former lawmaker as his new senior political secretary. Yoon had scrapped, actually, the civil affairs position after accusations of secret probes into political opponents and civilians. But, of course, the recent general election defeat seems to have prompted Yoon to bring back the post. Now, among the candidates considered are reportedly Kim Joo-hyun, a former Vice Justice Minister, and Park Chan-ho, a former Chief Prosecutor of the Gwangju District Prosecutor's Office, not to be confused with the former baseball player. Now, other roles, such as the Secretaries for Legal Affairs and Public Affairs, are also being considered. Now, whether to bring back the anti-corruption secretary, who used to oversee prosecutorial functions at the Blue House, is still undecided. Also, the position of senior presidential secretary for civil society, which was previously considered for abolition, looks likely to remain. Now, the office of the secretary for political affairs, another kind of body that is aimed at kind of gauging public sentiment, is reviewing several options, including merging roles that handle legislative affairs with those managing public opinion surveys and strategy planning. Sung Tae-yoon, Director of National Policy, and Lee Do-eun, the Senior Presidential Secretary for Public Relations, or the Presidential Press Secretary, are most likely to remain in office to ensure kind of continuity. The next candidate for the Prime Minister, though, is most likely to be announced after the top office completes its reorganization. So everything that doesn't require any legal, legislative hurdles to be cleared first, and then, of course, the Prime Minister, the most contentious, or shall we say controversial. It's going to be controversial for the opposition anyway, and yes, going to face a lot of backlash from whoever is the point. I
suppose, however you gauge it, I mean, it's a more high-stakes position, so there should be more backlash, but it's probably not going to be a speedy process, is what we're getting to.
Yes, so the presidential office has basically cleared all the quote-unquote easy stuff first, and then yes,
as in less hurdles.
The lower hurdles, and now the biggest one remains.
All right, let's move on to our third key word. As we've covered several times on the segment, Korea is going through some major social and demographic changes. Now, how we respond, we need better safety nets. Fresh set of measures are apparently introduced for that exact reason. Our third key word of the day.
Social mobility.
So the government is planning to increase parental leave benefits and double the paternity leave for fathers. This is part of their all-out efforts towards improving social mobility in South Korea. Tell us the details.
Right. So the plan aims to restore social mobility, as you said, and to create a dynamic economy. That's the view of the finance minister anyway. Now, the government believes that providing fair opportunities and allowing upward income mobility based on ability and effort can stimulate economic growth and create a virtuous cycle of social mobility. That was the words from the finance minister, Choi Sang-mok, who was speaking during an economy-related ministers' meeting. Now, first, the government will extend paternity leave from 10 days to 20 working days, that is. Now, this change addresses criticism that the shorter duration hinders fathers from actively participating in childcare following birth. Now, additionally, the allowance during childcare leave will also gradually rise from the current monthly cap of 1.5 billion won. Tax incentives for hiring individuals who have experienced career interruptions due to childbirth or childcare will be expanded. Currently, companies can receive a tax deduction for up to 3 years if they rehire individuals within the same industry. Now, to support women re-entering the workforce, the government will lift restrictions on the industries where returnees can receive tax benefits, which, as I said, are currently limited to the same or related industries, and the change will also include men as well. Additionally, the government will launch what they're calling a youth employment all-care platform, which will centralize job matching and vocational training information. This will involve cooperation between ministries and focus on services provided through university employment centers as well, so to get a better picture of the job market and more centralized data handling. Now, as part of its initiative to broaden educational opportunities for low-income groups, the government plans to increase the amount of scholarships as well. Meanwhile, for those in mandatory military service, the criteria for remote course credits will be expanded to support their continued education as well. Additionally, the government plans to increase the monthly contribution to soldiers' savings from 400,000 won to 500,000 starting next year. Also, regarding the individual savings account, or ISA, the government decided to eliminate the restriction that limits individuals to one ISA each. These changes aim to enhance consumer choice and make it easier for individuals to grow their assets through labour income. But all these measures include many legislative tasks and hurdles as well, which could lead to changes during discussions in what is the opposition-led parliament. So we'll have to see.
All right. So how do you centralize people's livelihoods and ensure that there are these safety nets when you want to take a break from work, come back, paternal leaves to be respected and expanded to better get a better gauge of the job market too? That's just a short list. All right. Let's turn our attention to our fourth keyword of the day.
2+2 meeting.
So Korea and Australia held a 2+2 meeting of their foreign and defense ministers in Melbourne. It was a first in nearly 3 years, and it is aimed at increasing the collaboration in the Indo-Pacific region, particularly seeing eye to eye probably in our, national security, for example, and military. What came out of this meeting?
Yeah, so it was a long time since it was held the last time. The pandemic, of course, affected it, and some scheduling kind of difficulties on Australia's part, apparently, was the cause.
And AUKUS is getting a lot more, spotlight, I suppose, because initially at the launch, I guess AUKUS was also met with a little bit of criticism. How much power could it actually influence? Can it have? Well, it's aligned a little bit further to be emboldened.
Yeah, that's true. That's right. But it has been held nonetheless, although it has been a while coming. Now, the meeting was attended by Foreign Minister Cho Tae-yeol, Defence Minister Shin Won-sik, and Australian counterparts Foreign Minister Penny Wong and Defence Minister Richard Marles. They agreed to promote peace, prosperity, and a rules-based international order in the Indo-Pacific region. They emphasised their shared values and committed to enhancing cooperation. The joint statement highlighted consensus on the need for trilateral cooperation among Korea, Japan, and Australia. It also acknowledged the significance of multilateral forums like AUKUS, which is the security alliance among the US, UK, and Australia, and the Quad as well, the security dialogue among the US, Japan, Australia, and India. They also discussed Seoul's potential participation in the AUKUS Defence Pact, which is a two-stage security pact to push back against China's growing influence in the Asia-Pacific region. Now, Pillar 1, the first stage, is focused on providing Australia with a fleet of nuclear-powered attack submarines. Korea is not expected to be part of that project. Pillar 2, or the second stage, aims to develop advanced warfighting capabilities such as AI, undersea drones, and hypersonic missiles, something that Korea could be a part of. But of course, they are wary because China strongly opposes the AUKUS Pact, warning that adding new members would destabilize the region. Now, the ministers also welcome strengthening the alliance with the US and praised improvements in Korea-Japan relations. Cho and Shin also held separate bilateral talks with their respective counterparts as well. So, most of the rhetoric is pretty much similar when it comes to these type of talks. But in terms of Korea's potential joining of the AUKUS Pact, is something that, of course, will be met with caution from Seoul as well, trying not to anger China too much.
With that, we move on to our final keyword of the day.
Fed rate freeze.
So the Federal Reserve has held its ground on interest rates as inflation remains high and its recent decrease has stalled. What did the Fed chair have to say and what's the latest?
Yeah, it was a widely expected move. So the rate remains between 5.25% and 5.5%. The Fed has been holding rates steady since last September following aggressive increases up to July last year. They noted that economic activities are expanding steadily, employment is strong, and unemployment rates are low. However, inflation, although lower than last year, is still high because recent data shows little progress towards the Fed's 2% target. Fed Chair Jerome Powell said it might take more time than expected for the Fed to start lowering the key rate, but he did say that the Fed's next move is unlikely to be a hike. So it's either going to be a freeze or less likely a cut. Now, previously, the Fed projected the rate would be around 4.6% actually by the end of this year, which suggested up to 3 rate cuts, something that investors were hoping to see. However, the recent sentiment in the market has become more cautious, expecting possibly only one rate cut this year, if any at all. Now, the latest Fed rate freeze put the gap between the key rates of Korea and the US at still a record high of 2 percentage points as well. So the Bank of Korea will also be keeping a watchful eye on the Fed's movements as well.
All right. Thank you very much, Adam, for today's coverage. Have a safe day, and we'll see you tomorrow.
You're very welcome. Have a wonderful day. See you tomorrow.
If you're listening to our program using the podcast service, just a reminder that we do go live Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. Korea Standard Time. So tune in and help us make the show more informative by giving us your input. See you bright and early on Good Morning Seoul.